This is Mike Lowe from Operations Sports, and this is a brand new vlog about franchise modes specifically, but going a little bit deeper. It's going to be a little bit different approach than some of the other ones you're seeing out there, where folks are, focusing on their gameplay and that sort of thing. Those are everywhere and they're great, and I encourage you to check them out. There's a lot actually on the Dynasty forum on Operations Sports worth looking at. But I wanted to do something a little bit differently. One of the areas that's going to make this vlog, I guess, unique compared to the more traditional ones you see out there is that it's going to focus on design. And what I mean by that is literal graphic design. You can see there, and I'll be putting up some screenshots here retroactively on the YouTube stream. But if you're watching this live, you're going to miss out on those at this point. But NBA 2K, their new expansion mode, it's very deep, and there's plenty of videos out there already documenting that for myself even. But what's really nice about this is it really allows for you to really get as creative as you want in that particular mode, using graphic design and that sort of thing. And so there's a lot of really cool things. In this particular vlog, we have two expansion teams, one which I've created, the Austin Grackles, which is a very popular bird here in Austin, Texas, and the Cincinnati Mallards, which is one that I took off of the community 2K share by, I think his username is ddominic92 or something like that. So props to him. Just a beautiful design. And so I wanted to use one that I created and the one that the community created, and kind of as we go through this vlog, we'll talk about how those are interacting and working within the league there. So anyway, so I have 4 points that I wanted to talk about in this little introduction video. The first, which I just mentioned on, is design. That's one of the areas I want this vlog to focus on in this franchise mode, because of what 2K allows us to do with that sort of thing. So that was point number one. Point number two is really my philosophy behind all of this. And so, again, there's tons of different, you know, just videos out there and different, people writing dynasty reports and that sort of thing. But I wanted this to be a little bit different. I wanted it to be something that could help the community perhaps, trudge through some of those challenges that people have, especially in Operation Sports. We have a lot of people who there's a debate going on, right? I mean, should you, be focused on sliders? Should you not be? Should you just play the game, or is it somewhere in between? And so one of the things I wanted to do with this is really what I wrote down is just not to get bogged down, right? I want to be able to go through this mode and help others, perhaps saying, hey, don't worry about this sort of thing. It's a game. It's supposed to be fun. It doesn't have to be perfect, right? So not letting it get bogged down. Play the game, enjoy the game, and let the cards fall where they may. And that was one of the reasons why I actually picked MyGM over my league. And this was actually probably the hardest decision I had to make for this vlog starting off. And while I do think I'll end up doing a my league eventually with part of this vlog, I wanted to start with a MyGM to really focus on what the game allows us to do, right? With MyGM, we have a lot more just important decisions, and there's more interaction going on in the MyGM mode. You don't get as much control in my league, but I'm looking at that as kind of a good thing. I don't have to worry about fiddling with any of the franchise sliders, such as, how fast should rookies progress, and how quickly should veterans degress, and things like that, and how good should the rookie talent pool be, and what should the salary cap be? Should it be on or off? I don't have to worry about any of that in this mode. It's already taken care of. This is allow me and you watching this to just focus on the game itself and to really see what we can do in this mode, and also provide constructive criticism to perhaps impact NBA 2K18. So little things there, and that's the best kind of criticism there is, right? How can we make things better, not just complaining, but offering different sort of solutions? So that's one of the things we'll be looking at. So again, another reason I chose MyGM over my league is that there is no undo button, right? If I back out of this and you look here in the very beginning, you get the option to save, but that's it. Once you actually go past this first thing, it's it. So these decisions that I'll be making are going to be, black and white. There's no going back, right? So, and I think that's kind of a fun thing. I think that simulates this mode a lot more realistically. As I mentioned, with the GM having the owner in there, it really utilizes the game's full potential without getting bogged down, and I mentioned that before. And then finally, that third point of why I chose my GM is, again, it's just keeping things very, very simple. It's not letting get bogged down, as I mentioned earlier. So the settings I'm using in this, it's just going to be default superstar sliders. I don't think I changed a single thing outside of that other than turning off the music here legally for the stream. But that's what it's going to be. I've reset my XP and whatnot at the top. You can see I'm back to a level 1. So I mean, this is starting right at step 1 here, just to really kind of get a simple feel for this particular mode. So that's the basic philosophy. There is more to that philosophy, which I'll explain here before the end of this first episode. And episode 1 will be a little bit shorter day. It's probably just be about 15 minutes or so. Um, and episode 2 will be picking up pretty quickly. That's going to be after the expansion draft, and I'll explain what that all means. So the third point that I wanted to talk about of my 4 is the actual simulation and broadcast approach. So one of the things is I'm not going to be playing. This isn't going to be a stream of just a bunch of games, right? Well, here it is. This is my 5th game this week. I'm playing, and come watch me play gameplay. There's a ton of that out there already, and there's people who are far, far, far better than me at this game who can show you how to play it much better. And well, I'll try to do some of that as well. This is going to be focused more on the decision making and just what this mode brings in MyGM specifically, and really just in these particular franchise modes. But of course, MyGM, as far as this is concerned, starting off. So again, the sim approach is going to be, I probably won't play a ton of games in the regular season. There'll be some key games. Maybe I'll play that Mallards team in the beginning, or I'll play my Pistons or something like that, or opening night. But I don't plan on playing a ton of regular season games. I'll probably play most of the playoff games if this team eventually makes it. But I wanted to be more focused on decision making behind these modes, and how does that work from a game design standpoint, right? So again, we're looking a little bit deeper here in this particular vlog. It's not just about playing games and making decisions. It's about making decisions, but also understanding how the game works, why it's working that way, and perhaps ways we can make it better for NBA 2K18. At least offer suggestions. Of course, I don't have anything to do with making the game better specifically. So. So I mentioned, yeah, just kind of not simming a ton. And then finally, the last thing, which I think is really, really important, why I wanted to save it for last, is I want this to be community decision based. So there are other dynasties out there where people share their input, but I think this one will be a lot of fun because there's going to be some time in between episodes to really dissect and discuss different decisions that we can make, right? So we're going to have things, come up. For instance, this expansion draft. I probably won't live stream this expansion draft because it's kind of boring, to be honest. But episode 2 will pick up at the end of the expansion draft. So one of the things I'd like to do is to go through and look at the expansion protected players, or the unprotected players, probably most importantly. So as it says here, it says, as a new team, you do not yet have any players to protect for the upcoming expansion draft. In the meantime, you can look through each team to see who they are keeping and who they are exposing to the draft. So you can see each team. This is defaulted, right? I didn't mess with this because I can't in my GM mode, which is kind of nice. The default is 8 players. And by the way, I'm using an opening night roster from 2K that I saved way back. This is the opening night roster, so they're not 100% accurate, but they are accurate to opening night, which is when this is starting. I am not starting in the off season. I thought this would be kind of fun as an expansion team, maybe just to pretend that the NBA has said that the expansion team is not going to participate in the amateur draft or really much of the off season. And so they are starting here with just the expansion draft, and then they'll have a little bit of free agency after that to put a team together that first year. So I did that because I wanted to keep the rosters intact. I wanted to, have the most accurate rosters with Derrick Rose in New York and that sort of thing on opening night. So that's why I did that. A couple of things also to keep in mind before we look at these unprotected players is 2 of the goals that my owner gave, and this is before I did the broadcast. One of them is he wants to keep the average roster age coming out of the draft, to be 25 years of age or less. And I answered saying that I wasn't sure we would do that, but I would try. I kind of picked that middle answer. And he wants to keep that roster low, but again, I'm not going to pass up a guy who may be older but could help this team or potentially be trade bait, which would certainly help the team probably better than some of these guys who are available. The other goal that our owner gave us is that I think it was within the first 3 years, he wants us to be in the black, meaning we're making a profit. So we need to keep this, salary low. I don't expect this team to be, a great team in the beginning, and so it's something that we'll have to keep our eye on to make sure that we are making money. So we want to be careful about picking up too big of contracts. So with that said, let's just go through. We can scroll through, of course, if they have a red block by them, these players are being protected. And I'll just scroll through each team, and I won't comment too much. But if you want to look at this closer, by all means, feel free to stop the video, pause it, that sort of thing, and you can look at who's available. Because this is the first community decision that I want to get feedback from people on. So if you have suggestions of players saying, hey, you know what, even though that guy's only a 75, he's really good, or maybe he simulates really, really well as a defensive player or something like that, please share that information, whether that's on Twitter, MikeLow_OS, or on the YouTube channel here. Leave a comment, and that's part of this, right? As I mentioned, kind of that my fourth objective of this episode 1 was community decisions. So how to handle things, who should we be picking? And that's just the start, right? That's where we're starting is with this expansion draft. How should we build this roster out? Should we be taking best available players, the best young players with potential, maybe players who are older that we can trade? So there's a lot of different ways we can go through that and do these sort of things. You're seeing these older players like Paul Pierce and things like that. So Vince Carter. Tony Allen's a player I really like. Probably talk more about him on episode 2 if we end up getting him. He is a player that I wouldn't be surprised if we ended up taking to potentially move. Great defensive player. So again, just scrolling through the teams here. Roy Hibbert. Now these are, again, small decisions, right? We're not going to take franchise building, players in this expansion draft, but there is good depth. The other thing to keep in mind with an expansion draft is once a player is chosen from a particular roster, the rest of the players that are exposed on that roster become unavailable. So in other words, a team can never lose 2 players in the expansion draft, or I should say a team can never lose more than 1 player in the expansion draft. If one of the teams took more here, these other guys would come off the board. So it's part of the strategy in drafting. You need to know, if there's 2 Pistons or whatever that you like, you need to be careful, grab the one you want, because the other one won't be there, and the other team could end up picking a Piston before you have that opportunity. So with 30 teams, there's going to be 30 picks, right? 1 player per team. Oops. So again, we're just scrolling through, looking at this here. This is a vlog that will take community decision input. There'll be stories written about this and that sort of thing on operationsports.com, but just starting small here in the beginning. Prepping for the expansion draft. Our owner wants a young roster. He wants to keep spending down. And we are not having a draft pick this first year, so we will be going into the season with an expansion roster and then whatever else we can muster up in free agency or through trade. But I thought that would be a fun challenge. Again, this is an opening night roster. 2K Sport opening night roster. So anyway, there are the 30 teams. The 2 expansion teams, as I mentioned early on, I made the Austin Grackles. By the way, I need to give a shout out. I didn't come up with this design myself. I did minor tweaking to it here and there, and I did work on the jerseys and the uniform and that sort of thing, and I tweeted those images out a little bit last night and some more today on Twitter. But I have to actually look up the person's name exactly, because when I checked yesterday, I could have swore it was a person with an actual name. He's from Australia who made this. But now when I looked at it this morning to give him the proper credit, it had like a company attached to it. So anyway, I did not make this, and again, I'm not selling it now. So that's the design I ended up going with, the Austin Grackles. That is up on 2K Share. So if you look for my PSN, Mike Low 47, you should see that up there if you wanted to take a closer look at it. I did take some screens that retroactively on YouTube I'll put in here so you can take a look. But the other one is a community design called the Cincinnati Mallards, which just looks awesome and just really, really, really cool. So I wanted to, again, do one that I did, do one that the community did, and I think that'd be kind of a fun way to really look at, again, kind of that second principle I talked about, which was focusing on the design aspect, because this is a game that allows you to literally use graphic design in your particular game. So lots of cool stuff. Unfortunately, not a lot of it you can see is unlocked until we get through this expansion draft. So episode 2 and beyond, we'll get into a lot more depth. For now, just wanted to look at the basics of what we're going to do here to get ourselves ready for this expansion draft. And then, yeah, we'll be ripping through that first season pretty quickly. So if you have input, I'm going to be wrapping up the first episode here. So if you have input you want to share, feel free to leave a comment there on YouTube or on Twitter, and I will definitely respond back. We can have some little discussion there about those sort of things and make some decisions together about how to best do this and really explore MyGM mode. That's the whole idea behind this, is to really dig in deep to these franchise modes, in particular here, MyGM. This is a little bit of a different video series where I'm not just going to be playing games left and right or teaching you how to, exploit the game. It's nothing like that. This is really how to get the most out of MyGM or out of franchise modes in particular, and really just how to enjoy the game, right? Get back to just not worrying so much about having the perfect settings and just going back and just playing it like you did, maybe back in the Nintendo days, like if you're my age and that sort of thing. So anyway, that's the gist. That is episode 1. I look forward to hearing from y'all, and I'll be on Operation Sports again with more information on this. So thanks everybody for watching. Episode 2 could even be later today, so stick around for that, or keep your eyes and ears posted for that, and I will post as soon as that one's getting ready to go. Thanks for watching, everybody. If you have input, please share. Talk to you all soon.